going on, everybody? What is going on today? What's going on, everybody? Matthew Moniz here. Today we have a brand new live stream. We're talking about the MacBook Air 2020, which I just reviewed yesterday. I'll place a link to that in my video description down below if you feel like checking it out. The point of this video is not to start a war about Mac OS versus Windows and which one is better. That's not the reason at all. Like, they're both fantastic operating systems. I use both operating systems on a daily basis. But the idea of this video is to help educate you and help you, the person watching, make a better decision on purchasing the right Ultrabook for your workflow. That's the whole concept of this video. So I want to talk about some of my findings about the MacBook Air 2020, and then I'm going to talk about some alternatives that might fit your lifestyle better. And then, of course, like we always do at the end of every video, we'll take all of your questions. Now, with that being said, I just want to say what's up. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the stream. Glad to see everybody here. You guys are looking what do you mean no audio? There is audio. I'm glad everyone's here. Hope everyone's doing well, staying safe, staying inside, and yeah, just trying to ride this crazy storm out. Now, the first thing is the MacBook Air 2020. This is Apple's cheapest laptop. $1,000 will get you the i3 version, or $1,100 will get you this little Bambino right here. The thing is, Apple's cheapest laptop also happens to be the same price point as some really good premium Windows Ultrabooks. So I hope to be able to answer your questions between all of these devices. One of the main things in my previous MacBook Air video was the concept of overheating. I talked about it. I said the MacBook Air does not overheat, because even though it is hitting 100 degrees Celsius, which is very hot, it does not shut off. And of course, it does not thermal throttle, which means the base clock speeds, or the clock speeds in general, are going below base clock. Don't play any more audio tricks on me, because it scared me last time. The audio is working, so nice try, the guy in the chat who tried to scare me with that. But here's the thing. If you're a developer and you're looking for a brand new laptop, the MacBook becomes very attractive for one specific reason. The fact that you can develop pretty much everything on it. Like, if you want to do Xcode and create an iOS app or an iPadOS app or anything Apple related, you can't do that on a Windows laptop. You can't do that on a Linux machine. You have to use an Apple product. So if that someone is you and you feel like you're going to be developing a lot of Apple content, then this video is not for you. Just go buy a MacBook. Probably the only option you have right now is this or the MacBook Pro. And if you're thinking about the MacBook Pro, I'd probably wait for the 14-inch version, because that's coming out very soon. Now, the other thing to note is longevity of this laptop. Now, because this is using a lower wattage CPU, the Y series processor, a modified version of it, it does overheat like I was talking about before. But because the chip is not being pushed as hard as a U series or H series with a higher TDP, it should last longer. But it's just hard to accept. Like, I'm used to seeing PCs struggle at 100 degrees, slowing down to the point where the performance is inadequate. I'm used to seeing PCs have to manipulate their fan curves and adjust the thermals based on how hot the processor is getting in order to increase the longevity of the CPU. When I start seeing 100 degrees on a laptop, especially on a Y series laptop, which has a low wattage, which should in general run as cool as possible, it has me concerned. I personally feel like Apple does not put a heat pipe connecting the CPU to the fan to reduce the performance of the laptop in order to upsell certain folks to their MacBook Pro 13. That's my personal opinion. I could be a conspiracy theory, but it's something to think about, because I haven't tested it. I've seen a video by Max Tech. He actually hooked up a water cooler to it, and he was able to increase the performance by 20%. Not that you'd ever water cool a laptop, but even if you had, let's say, a heat pipe and this was thermally cooled a little bit better, you might see a 10 to 15% performance increase. Now, the big question is, which laptop should you buy? So I like the MacBook, but I think for $1,100, there are a few Windows laptops that offer better value. And the first one is the Microsoft Surface Laptop 3. Right now, you can buy this thing for $999. That's the i5 model. The only difference between this and the MacBook Pro is the storage space. With the MacBook Pro, for the same price, you get 256 gigabytes of storage, whereas the Microsoft Surface Laptop for $999, you only get 128. However, if you do increase the price by $100, you can get the same amount of storage. Now, what are the benefits of going with the Surface Laptop? If you're not a developer and you're mostly working in Office and productivity, Microsoft Office, and the list goes on, the Microsoft Surface Laptop makes a lot more sense. It's using that wonderful 3:2 aspect ratio, which has more vertical space than the 16:10 aspect ratio on the MacBook Air. And if you're working with specific documents and you're working in a web browser, having that extra vertical space is such a nice thing to have. Now, if you work more in a mixed environment, then yeah, the screen on the MacBook Air makes more sense because it's a great compromise for someone who works in a web browser but also does a lot of media consumption or even light video editing. Now, in terms of color accuracy, they're both great screens. They're both QHD. You do get a slightly bigger 13.5-inch display on the Surface Laptop 3 compared to the 13.3-inch display on the MacBook Air. Bezel sizes are very similar. They're both using glossy displays. So if you notice that, you can see the reflection right now of the camera in the displays. You do get a touch display with the Surface Laptop, where of course every single Mac does not have a touch display. You can also buy a Surface Pen to use with this and draw on a screen. I don't suggest it. Drawing on a traditional laptop is a little bit awkward compared to drawing on something like the Surface Pro or a Surface Book. The other thing to note is battery life. Both of these laptops share very similar battery life, 8 to 10 hours, which is not a lot compared to other laptops on the market today. Some of them are pushing 15 hours, like the Dell Xps 13. Keyboards. Definitely going to go to the Mac. Actually, no, let me take that back. Keyboards are very similar. Like in terms of typing experience, I will say that the improvement to the scissor switches is really nice. But I do like the Microsoft keyboard too. It's a little bit softer, but the differences between both of these computers are very, very minor. Both of them have very big touchpads, and compared to every other single Windows laptop I talk about today, the Surface Laptop 3 has the best touchpad out of all of these Windows laptops. However, the touchpad on the MacBook Air is still the gold standard. Like if you're looking for the best touchpad, it still can't be beat. Now, is this the best keyboard out of all the laptops I'm talking about? No, but it's good. I like the fact that they are using a T-series setup for the keys as opposed to the old style that looks like a lot like this on the 2019 MacBook Air, which I have right here. I'll show you guys the difference on what they changed from the previous generation to give you an idea. So here's the 2019 MacBook Air, old butterfly switches. This is the old arrow key setup. This is the new arrow key setup. So a lot of people who use those arrow keys will appreciate that. All right, internals. You can't really upgrade much on either laptop. The only thing you can do with the Surface Laptop 3 is open up the bottom and swap out the SSD for something a tiny bit bigger. What you do is you remove these pads, you unscrew it, and then you lift it up from the keyboard, and then you can swap out the SSD and put something bigger. I will say though, that the SSD inside of here is a custom M2 form factor, so it's probably not going to be as cheap as the traditional M2 NVMe SSDs that you're used to seeing. And on top of that, the speed differences in the drive itself is pretty similar, but it's slightly faster on the Surface Laptop 3. I think I was getting read speeds of 2029 read, 809 write, whereas I was getting faster write speeds of about 1100 on the MacBook Air compared to 1600 on the, or 1600 read on the MacBook Air. So battery life, 8 to 10 hours, so nothing really different there. But the big difference comes down to performance. The Surface Laptop 3 is just a faster laptop in general. It's using that more powerful processor, the U-series chip, which has a higher TDP, which lets you push it further. If you're doing coding, you're going to find your compile times are faster on this, even though it's using Windows, like compiling Mozilla Firefox, for example, which typically is better optimized on a MacBook Air, is still faster on the Surface Laptop 3. I was able to compile it in 70 minutes compared to 98 on the MacBook Air. Now, in all fairness, the better comparison would be to the MacBook Pro 13, which I was able to do in 47 minutes. So that should give you an idea the performance difference jumping from a modified Y series CPU to a U series CPU, such as the one in the MacBook Pro 13 and the Surface Laptop 3. XPS 13 is coming. Stay tuned. Just hold your horses. Let's get through the Surface Laptop 3, and then I'll talk about the next ones. What else do you guys need to know? Fan noise, they're both loud on both of these computers when things are at full load. Louder in the MacBook Air because that single fan has to constantly be spinning since there's no heat pipe to help dissipate the heat. Besides that, they're both the exact same weight. Like, even though this looks smaller, they're technically the same weight. This one is 2.8 pounds and the Surface Laptop 3 is also 2.8 pounds. But if you're talking about form factor, the Air is smaller because it's using a wider display as opposed to that taller display. Do you guys want to see a difference of what a web page looks like between a 33x2 display and a 16x10? Let me load up a web page here for you guys, and I'll show you the difference. So I'm just going to load up the Verge's website because they have a black, what's it called? A black background, which is better on the camera. And you guys can see the difference in terms of what you get on the screen compared to 16x10. So this laptop here, let me just try and make this bigger. Okay. So here's the difference. Okay, so you know what? Let me make sure the text size is the same because right now the Apple computer has the same text size. Hold on. Let me see here. Display settings. I want to make sure the magnification's the same because if the magnification's smaller on the other, then technically yes, you'll see more on the 16x10 than you would on the 3x2. So this is at 150%. Okay. And this one is, hold on. System preferences. In the meantime, HP Spectre X360 on your lineup mate. Yes, it is. The Spectre 360 will be in this video, so stay tuned for that. Just going to quickly get through the Surface Laptop 3, and then we'll move on to the next laptop, and we'll speak about that one next. Okay. I probably should have better prepared this, but let's go to scaled. So right now this is 12. So right now it's on 1440 by 900. This one is, I wonder if I can go to, let's do 100%. Okay, so this is 100%, and I'm going to put this on its max as well. So this is what 16x10 looks like if you max it out at the highest pixel density. And this is what 3x2 looks like. So see the difference in how much vertical space you get with the 3x2 aspect ratio compared to a 16x10. It's a significant difference, and this really matters if you're working in a document or browsing a web page. It's just a lot easier on the eyes, and it's just a lot more natural. It's more similar to like reading off a piece of paper as opposed to a wider screen, which is not as nice, to say the least. I'd rather have this for what I do, like 16x10, because I do a bit of both. But if you're just working in a browser, then this is much nicer to look at. Okay, what else did we talk about before I wrap up the Surface Laptop 3? Last thing is ports. 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports on the MacBook Air, which is always very nice. This does support higher res displays in 4K. It's also using the Ice Lake chips, so you can have high refresh displays hooked up to this, and it could technically do it. The Surface Laptop, you get more variety. So you get the USB-A, you get USB Type-C, which is not Thunderbolt 3, the audio jack, and then of course you have your Surface Connect port, which gives you a lot of options in terms of the docks you can connect to it and a little bit of speed. That's not as fast as Thunderbolt 3, but still fast. So some person is spamming X1 Carbon in the chat. The X1 Carbon is a great laptop, but it's not comparable to any of these because the price point of that laptop is much more expensive, and you start hitting that business territory. Once you go in that territory, you're paying a premium for security features, for vPro, for stuff that like dedicated hardware chips to prevent espionage and stuff like that. So not in the same category as the laptops I'm talking about today. It's definitely more of a premium to purchase something like that. So one person asked, Zaid Legardian asked about display quality. So like I said, they're both QHD-ish displays. The MacBook Air is more pixel dense because it just has a slightly higher resolution. But in terms of color gamut and color accuracy, they're pretty darn close. They're pretty close, but the Surface Laptop 3 is slightly better. For example, this has a 98% sRGB compared to 99%. This has a slightly higher P3 and Adobe RGB rating, but this MacBook Air has a slightly brighter display. So they're fairly even. They're fairly even. They both come with QHD displays, which is super, super nice. Okay, so that's the Surface Laptop 3. I think for $999, it offers the best value if you don't mind using Windows. So if you're not a developer and you're buying something that's very focused on the office, very focused on the web browser, very focused on writing emails, I think the Surface Laptop makes the most sense. Again, this is assuming you're not like invested in the Apple ecosystem and you want your watch and your iPhone to all talk to each other and all that kind of stuff. Surface Laptop, $999 for the exact same specs as the MacBook Air. The second option, which is $1,119 for an i5, is the HP Spectre X360. This is a bit of a different beast because you're getting an actual 2-in-1. This thing flips 360 degrees, giving you different options depending on the type of workflow you're doing. If you're drawing a lot, you have the screen to draw on, to write on, which is great. This also comes with a pen, which is very convenient. And you also get more of a port selection. You have that USB port on the left-hand side. I'm not a fan of this style of USB port. You guys might have remembered in a previous live stream I complained about this. I've actually broken this because it's very cheaply made. I understand why they do it. I just don't think it's the best implementation just because it breaks off super easy. You have that audio jack, you got your power button on the back, and then on this side you have two more USB Type-C Thunderbolt 3 ports and a little switch here to turn the camera on and off. So a lot more ports, a lot more variety. You don't have to carry around dongles. And if you're the type of person that has a bunch of different peripherals they're using with their laptop and you want some variety, then you're better off looking at the HP Spectre X360. Now, one thing to note about the HP Spectre X360, out of all the i5s that I'm showing you guys today, besides the MacBook Air because it's Y series, out of all the U series Windows i5s I'm showing you today, this one is the G4, not the G7. The difference between the G4 and the G7 is the boost clock speed. This one only goes up to 3.7, whereas the G7 and the Surface laptop and the other laptop I'm about to talk about goes up to 3.9. Now, is this a big deal? Absolutely not. Okay, this dude is getting blocked. Where's Python at? Hold on here. Remove. Okay. Wrong bin. I'm going to give you mod so this loser doesn't keep hiding. Okay, there you go. He said it. Okay, so anyways, so this has the G4, which is more than fast enough. Do not spend the extra $100 and buy the G7 on the HP Spectre X360 because if you do, you're not going to see that boost clock of 3.9 that often. Like this is the sweet spot. It's fine. Still faster than the MacBook Air. Not a big deal. Now, the thing about the Spectre X360 that I really like is that it's much better than all the previous versions. The issue I had with previous HP Spectres is the touchpad. They're using Synaptic drivers. I know technically you can install Windows Precision, but this has just been updated significantly. I do like the fact that the keyboard has been improved. It's not the best one on the table, but it's really good. It's using this style of arrow keys, which is not as nice as the T-shaped keys. You do have a fingerprint scanner on the bottom here, like you have Touch ID over here, and you also have Windows Hello on the top. All the Windows laptops I'm talking about today have Windows Hello facial recognition. The only laptop that does not have a fingerprint scanner is the Surface Laptop 3, and that's because it doesn't need one. Like, it's just Microsoft's philosophy is if you have the Face ID, you don't need the fingerprint scanner. It's more than secure enough. Why put it when you don't need it? So I don't know how you feel about that, but I thought I'd mention it. So this comes with both. Performance-wise, like I said, it's not as fast as the next laptop I'm about to talk about, but it's probably a little bit slower than the Surface Laptop 3. I find when this thing gets under load, it starts to chug a little bit because there's like, no, it's not overheating. It's just their fan curves and the way they're managing heat on this laptop is very aggressive. And when I've tried to play games on it or hooked it up to an external GPU, I would start to notice dropped frames on the HP Spectre X360. But if you're not that two people who are hooking it up to an external GPU, this is not really going to apply to you. Now, display-wise, this is a full HD display. So that's the downfall to this laptop for $1,119. It's a full HD display, but it does have a better color gamut and slightly better color accuracy than the MacBook Air. Now, don't get me wrong. I'd still personally prefer the MacBook Air display just because it has a QHD display and you just get more screen real estate with it. But if you want to talk specifically about color reproduction, then the display on the Spectre is better. So here's another idea. So here's the difference between, let me put it to 100. Actually, let me show you the difference between 16 by 9, 16 by 10, and what was the last one? 3 by 2. I'm going to show you the difference. Okay, so this is at 100%. I have The Verge's website open. Okay, I'm going to just get out of this like that for a second. I'm going to refresh this. I want to show you the difference in terms of screen real estate. So this is what 16 by 10 and 16 by 9 looks like, okay? So as you can see, there is a difference of how much you get on the display, more vertical space. Then once you bring in 3 by 2, it gets like serious business over here. Like, look at the difference, okay? So this will give you an idea of what you're going to see on the display between all three of these, okay? That's the big difference. So the most vertical space is obviously on the Surface laptop. The one in the middle, which is the HP Spectre X360, that's your standard, what most of you are used to, 16 by 9 displays. And then on the end, we have our 16 by 10, which is the MacBook Air, which I think is a nice sweet spot, which gives you a bit of the best of both worlds. Both worlds? Oh my God, I can't speak English today. Now, some of you asked about sound quality. I'll just tell you straight up. The MacBook Air has better sound than all the laptops I'm talking about today. They all sound good. They all sound really good. Like, I don't have any complaints about any of them in terms of sound quality. It's just Apple just does such a great job with their speaker performance on their laptops. Like, still by far the best speakers on a laptop. Now, I'm not going to play it for you like I usually do in most of my videos, only because every time I do a review comparison, I usually compare it to the MacBook Air. And if you're interested in hearing how this sounds to another laptop, you can check out one of my previous videos. I also have another video coming out on the weekend, which also compares sound to the MacBook Air. So I'll let you guys watch it in some of those. All right, back to the differences. So the HP Spectre X360 has another advantage over the Surface laptop and the MacBook Air, is that you can expand the storage and you can expand the RAM. I think you can expand the RAM. I believe you can. I have to check my previous review, but I'm pretty sure the RAM and the SSD are both expandable, allowing you to upgrade things down the road. Build quality, I got to give it to the MacBook Air. I still think this has the most finesse out of all the laptops I'm about to show you today. Not that any of these Windows laptops have poor build quality. It's just like the way they machine this aluminum, like the finesse and the smoothness to the sides of the laptop. There's just a lot more put into it than most of these laptops I'm showing you. The Surface laptop comes really close, but I still think the MacBook Air, even though it's like this design is like 4 or 5 years old, still has one of the best machined aluminum. The worst is probably the Spectre X360. I feel like this has the worst build quality out of the bunch. And when I say the worst, I don't mean it's bad, like you should avoid it. I just mean compared to all the other laptops I'm talking about today. Don't worry, we're gonna do some screen tests, some flexes, some keyboard flexes once I get through all these laptops. Now, battery life on the HP Spectre is as good, if not a little bit better than the MacBook Air. I'm getting over 9 hours, sometimes 10 hours of use with the Spectre X360 compared to about 8 with the MacBook Air. Apple has the MacBook Air listed on their website getting 10 to 12 hours of use, but the way Apple does their battery tests are it's the most ridiculous thing ever. Most people, or most normal people, will have some sort of mixed workload. And that mixed workload usually involves a little bit of web browsing, some idle time, some movie watching, some answering some emails. The list goes on. Apple's battery tests are all done with Apple software. So what they'll do is they'll just loop an Apple TV video, maybe load up Safari for a bit, and then give you inflated battery life scores. If you're that one dude who only lives in an Apple world where you're just using their software, then you'll get 10 to 12 hours of use. But if you're a normal human being, then you're looking at more like 8 hours of use before needing to charge. I'm trying to think what else you guys need to know about the differences between both of these laptops. Getting inside of this is a bit more messy though. Like, for example, if you want to get inside this laptop, you can see I've made like a botchery of this. You have to remove all the screws, which can be done very easily. Then you have to rip off this plastic piece on the bottom, which I've done, which is the pad, so it doesn't slip off the desk, and then remove the screws on the bottom to get inside. Heat on this, it doesn't overheat. It does, does throttle like every other laptop, but it doesn't get up to 100 degrees like the MacBook Air if you're worried about heat management. Besides that, I think that's it between the MacBook Air and the HP Spectre X360. So a 2-second recap, go for the Surface laptop, which is the best bang for your buck out of all the ones I suggested. Spectre X360, I feel like offers you the most value and kind of like touches on everybody's workflow. Like if you're a developer, you can still develop with this as long as you don't need any iOS applications. If you just want to watch content and flip the screen around, you can do that. If you sketch, draw, or jot down notes and you want to use the pen, the Spectre will give you that ability. So best value in terms of features is the Spectre X360. Best bang for the buck in the premium segment compared to the MacBook Air, Surface Laptop 3. And the one that I love the most this year, I wouldn't say the most, but the one that surprised me the most this year is, can you guys guess it? Oh, so some person said weight. The weight of the HP Spectre X360 is 2.86 pounds. So same weight as the MacBook Air. MacBook Air is 2.8. The other two Windows laptops I just talked about are also 2.8. Thank you, Ishan, for the donation. You are the man. I promise I will be doing an in-depth review of the Dell XPS 15 when it comes out. Crossing fingers, hopefully soon. You stay safe as well, my friend, and thank you so much for being here. Yes, G4, which includes the Plus for the i5. Yes, the G4 does include the Iris Plus graphics for the i5. All of these laptops do use the newer Iris Plus graphics. So that's a big boost in terms of graphical performance. Now, for those of you curious on whether or not you can game with a MacBook Air, the short answer is no. Unless you're doing like Apple Arcade stuff, if you're looking for any of the standard, more advanced titles, you can't game on this. I did notice a performance boost in games like Fortnite on the previous MacBook Air 2019, which I have right here. I was getting really poor frame rates. This, I can get like about 40 frames per second if I drop the settings down to medium. But again, you're not buying a MacBook Air to game on. You're not buying a MacBook Air to do any sort of intensive workload. You're buying a MacBook Air for the basics. Think about it this way. Think about the MacBook Air. Okay, this is kind of harsh when I say this, and think about the MacBook Air as Apple's Chromebook of laptops. A better Chromebook, to be fair, okay? Because it can definitely do more than a Chromebook, but it doesn't have the kahunas of the more powerful laptops that you're used to seeing. So, the laptop of all laptops, the one where I feel offers the best value, if you're willing to go to Windows and you don't mind not living in that Mac OS world, is, and I know a lot of you guys are guessing this right now, the Dell XPS 13. I'm really impressed with the Dell XPS 13 this year. It's a really good, solid Ultrabook. I've been really hard on Dell's laptops over the past 4 to 5 years. Not 4 to 5 years, over the past 3 years. They were beautiful. They made some great improvements, but they were always hindered by performance issues, whether it was overheating or whether it was any of that kind of stuff. It just wasn't there. But this redesign, the 2020 model, wow. It's a beautiful thing. Mwah. They did a good job. Now, again, let's talk about build quality quickly. This is a U series processor, okay? Let me reiterate that. This is a much more powerful processor than the MacBook Air. This one retails for, I wrote it down, $1,200 compared to $1,100 for the i5 and the MacBook Air. So $100 more for similar specs. But what you get is a laptop that's not only smaller in form factor, it's actually lighter, 2.6 pounds compared to 2.8, and thinner, okay? This laptop is thinner than the MacBook Air. I sometimes wonder why Apple's even selling the MacBook Air. Like, it's just not making a lot of sense to me. Like, why not just sell the MacBook Pro? Like, you can get that type of hardware in a chassis this size. I think they're just doing it so they can have another category or segment with a different price point. They can upsell you in 3 different levels as opposed to only 2. Anyways, another video for another day. But the Dell XPS 13 has good build quality, very exceptional. I do prefer the carbon fiber deck on this laptop over the metal aluminum deck on the MacBook Air. It's just a lot more comfortable to rest your wrists on. It just feels good. Now, granted, this used to be a complete finger magnet. They've improved the material. It's not as bad now. Like, it does get fingerprints, you can see here on the touchpad, but it's significantly better than before. This is also spill resistant or spill proof. I don't suggest you go out and test it, but you have that ability. If you accidentally spill some water on this, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable spilling it on the Dell XPS 13 than I would on the MacBook Air, especially because they have these vents here, which are for the speakers, and water can seep inside of it. I will say this though, this keyboard on the Dell XPS 13 is awesome. It is so much more comfortable to type on than the scissor switches on the MacBook Air. I might be using scissor switches too, I don't know, but it's just more tactile. There's more travel distance. It feels good. It feels good inside to type on this compared to that. It's just better spaced. I will give the MacBook Air one thing though. It does have better T-shaped keys. You know, just again, nitpicking here. It does have better T-shaped keys, but everything else feels good. Like, I was doing a typing test. This is super subjective. I was typing like 98 words per minute on the Dell XPS 13 compared to 90 on the MacBook Air. Or was it 94? Anyways, I was typing faster on this. Super subjective. It could be different every time because the words are always different, so it's not really a fair test, but I just felt like I was typing on this faster. The other thing to note is that the MacBook Air does not have Wi-Fi 6. Every other Windows laptop I just spoke about in this video has Wi-Fi 6. Now, this is not important to a lot of people. Most of us don't have Wi-Fi 6 routers at home, nor is it something you're going to be upgrading to and maybe for another year. And most coffee shops are not just going to swap their equipment out for Wi-Fi 6 routers. But I happen to switch to Wi-Fi 6 both in my office and at home. And by God, does it make a big difference. Not only can the router handle more active devices connect to it, I just find the speeds to be better when it's paired with a Wi-Fi 6 modem in the laptop. So I did a couple of tests. The Wi-Fi 6 speeds on the Dell XPS 13, even with its killer card, is it a killer card? I think it's a killer card, is better than the Wi-Fi speeds on the MacBook Air. Actually, you know what? Let's just do a test right now. Talk is cheap, right? So let's start off with the MacBook Air so you guys can see this. So we're going to do a Wi-Fi 6 test right here. Ooh, it's actually looking really good. Watch me eat my words. Watch the MacBook Air win this time. I tested it 3 times in the other room, and the Dell XPS 13 won. So this could all be for no reason. I want to hear some bets in the comment section. Which one's going to win? I need to see some bets. We're turning this into a gambling channel. I want to see some bets. Okay, so we're looking at 450 down and 404 up. Time for the Dell test. Here we go. Come on, Dell. Don't make me look stupid on camera. Oh, look at that difference. Look at that difference. Huge. Huge. Who needs tickets? Gambling time, baby. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. We're looking at 557 down. Uh-oh. Looks like Apple might win out on the upload speed. Looks like they're going to win on the upload speed. Or maybe not. It's catching up. It's catching up. Can it do it? Oh, my God. The Dell takes the lead with the faster Wi-Fi speeds. 557 down compared to 449. 472 up compared to 404 up on the MacBook Air. Now, again, this is a dumb test. It's like one of those nonsense phone speed tests that you see on YouTube where you have a guy going with his finger like, oh, this is faster. At the end of the day, the extra 10 megabits a second is not going to really affect your life. I do notice the latency is a little bit lower on this. The point I'm trying to make is that you do see a speed difference with a Wi-Fi 6 modem paired with a Wi-Fi 6 router. And even though this is using a killer card, it's not the fastest Wi-Fi 6 laptop here. Like if I was to put the HP Spectre against this, it would probably beat it out because it has the Intel Wi-Fi 6 modem compared to that killer card. Okay, so we talked about the keyboard. We talked about Wi-Fi 6. Now we got to go over to the touchpad again. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but MacBook Air has the better touchpad. It's a lot more accurate. It's bigger and it's smoother. Not that this one's bad. It's a great touchpad out of the Spectre and the Surface laptop. The Surface laptop comes second for touchpad, then the Dell XPS 13, then the Spectre X360 because it has the most horizontal touchpad, giving you less space to move your hands. They're all using Windows Precision Driver, obviously, except for the MacBook Air. Again, sound is better on the MacBook Air. I'm not going to do a sound test, but Dell did improve the speakers on the Dell XPS 13. They're coming out of the bottom, but they sound really good. Not as good as the MacBook Air, but they still sound really good. Now, battery life. Oh, boy. There's a difference here. Much big difference. Like, Dell just killed it with the battery life. 15 hours, and this is doing a very balanced workload. We're talking things like browsing the net, doing a little bit of homework, watching movies, maybe visiting my YouTube channel and watching one of my terrible videos to fall asleep. 15 hours and 22 minutes before needing to charge compared to the 8 to 10 that you'd get on the Dell XPS 13. So if you're someone who's traveling a lot, who's working in their car, well, maybe not so much right now because of what's going on, you're going to get the better battery life on the Dell XPS 13. Well, I think I said Dell XPS 13 about 9,000 times today. Performance, again, really impressed of what Dell lets you do. And I just want to give a quick update why I like this laptop for its performance is because you can go into, so again, Windows Hello, which is nice. You can go into their profile manager, their Dell Power Manager, and it allows you to select different formats of what you want how you want your laptop to act. So for example, under thermal management here, you know what? Why am I doing it like this? I'll plug it so you guys can see. So under thermal management here, you have the ability to select, it's coming up, give it a second, come on, show the second screen. You can do it. Oh, come on. Oh, it doesn't want to show the second screen. Let me see if I can get this going here. It should show it. Try connecting that again. Come on, pop up, Mr. Signal. You can do it. Doesn't want to show it. Okay, there we go. Came up finally. So in their profile manager, there are 4 different settings, which I really, really like. You have an optimized mode, which is like your standard everyday thermal management mode, which keeps everything pretty balanced. Then you have a cool mode, which obviously reduces the performance so that the fan doesn't get too loud. You have quiet, which reduces it even further. But you have ultra performance, and this just goes bonkers. Like, this is truly the first regular Ultrabook that I've hooked up to an external GPU, and I actually got really good frame rates with no frame drops or stutters. The only other Ultrabooks that I was able to do that with were gaming Ultrabooks like the Razer Blade Stealth, for example. I tried it with the Spectre 360, and it would chug. Like, I would get drop frames. There was a bottleneck there. It just couldn't do it. But because it allows the CPU to get so much harder and push the performance, sometimes up to over 90 degrees, you're able to use an external GPU with this. Again, I don't know why I'm talking about external GPUs. There's probably only like half a person in this chat that's going to do that. But if you're that mad lad, you can do that with the Dell XPS 13, and by God, does it work perfectly. So I thought I'd just bring that up for you guys. What else? Can you open up the XPS with one hand? Of course you can. Of course you can. If you couldn't open it up with one hand, I wouldn't even talk about this laptop as a contender to the MacBook Air. So here is the, oh my God, sorry guys. Here is the MacBook Air, one hand, okay? Here is the Dell XPS 13 with one hand. Now granted, it is slightly easier to open up the MacBook Air with one hand because you have this little lip on the bottom, which allows you to get your fingers in a bit easier. Whereas the Dell XPS 13, you have to take your finger and you got to stick it in. Well, that did not sound good. That's what she said. You got to stick your finger in there and then use your nail to open it up like that. Okay? So that gives you an idea of if you can open up with one hand. What else do I need to tell you guys? So ports, exactly the same. 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports on both of these laptops. The big difference, though, is that you have them on opposite ends with the Dell XPS 13, but you also get the advantage of getting a micro SD card slot, which is kind of nice if you need that extra expandable storage. So yes, for $100 more, you're getting a computer that is more powerful, faster, can compile Mozilla Firefox for those developers faster, 72 minutes compared to 98 minutes on the MacBook Air. So, and that's good because you have to remember, Windows laptops are not the best to compile code on just because of the operating system. Usually you want to install Linux, or you buy a MacBook because it's on Unix, and then you get a more optimized system for it where your compile times are usually faster. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, a MacBook Pro 13 will compile Firefox significantly faster than all of these laptops in about 47 minutes. So that's the power of an operating system optimized for the task that you're taking on hand. So one person is saying XPS 13 versus X1 Carbon. I personally think XPS 13, it's cheaper. You're getting a lot more value for the price. You're not paying extra for security features. Not that it's better than the X1 Carbon. I just think for the price point, you're getting a better deal. So just a quick little test, because I know some of you guys like this. We're going to do a little wobble test for you guys. So here is the Dell XPS 13. Here is the MacBook Air. Let me see if I can fit all these laptops in here. Okay. Here's the MacBook Air. Let's grab the Spectre X360. Okay, I don't know if I can fit all of these laptops. I'm going to try like that. And we got the Surface Laptop 3. Okay. All right. So first we're going to test. I'm just going to shake the table a little bit, and we're going to see which one kind of, I don't know, the monitor shakes the most. Okay, so definitely the Spectre X360 has a more wobbly screen, which is expected. Like, this is a 2-in-1. 2-in-1's hinges are not as tight as a traditional clamshell laptop, but this hinge is still really, really good for a 2-in-1, but it's expected to be a bit looser than the other ones. Now, between these 3 laptops, This is the dumbest test in the world. I know some of you appreciate this. I find it ridiculous because I look like a monkey. Ooh, ah, ah, ooh, 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 ah, ah. Hold on. I mean, they're all pretty even. I would say the stiffest hinge, I don't know. It's a tie between the Dell XPS 13 and the Mac. Actually, you know what? A little bit stiffer on the Dell XPS 13, a little bit. Very little. Then I would say the MacBook Air. Then in last, I would say the Surface Laptop 3, only because it wobbles more because the screen is taller. So taller the screen, there's slightly more wobble. Now, in terms of keyboard flex, let's see if I can put this all around here. In terms of keyboard flex, okay. Ooh. It's hard to see this one. Okay, so keyboard flex, I would say the MacBook Air has the least amount of keyboard flex, which is really good. Then I would say, it's hard to tell with this one. Hold on. I would say the HP Spectre X360 has the most keyboard flex, followed by, I would say the Dell XPS 13. Actually, Dell XPS 13 is kind of squishy. Hold on. I don't know. I think these two are pretty much tied for keyboard flex. And then the Surface Laptop 3, but the number one with the least amount of resistance is definitely the MacBook Air. Now, again, this test is just as dumb as a lot of those speed tests you see on YouTube, but I know some of you care. And if it is too soft, it will affect your typing. You don't want a squishy chassis or deck on your keyboard. It's not a lot of fun to use when you're using it every day. You want something that can hold up. You want something that's not going to crush in your bag when you're using it. So all of them have pretty good keyboard flex, but the least amount of flex, going to have to give it to the MacBook Air. Like I said, I still think this MacBook Air has some of the best build quality. It just really does. It just sucks you can't upgrade anything inside. Dell XPS 13 comes in a close second. It just has like really rough edges, which I'm not a fan of. Okay, so I think that's it between comparing all these laptops. I don't think I missed anything. I'm trying to think what else there is really to talk about. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a quick recap, quick summary of all these laptops, and then I'm going to take all your questions about these laptops or any other questions you have. Howdy, Krabby Gamer. Welcome to the chat. So, like I said in the beginning of this video, for $999, the Surface Laptop 3 offers the best value out of all these computers. They're all using i5s, but this one is $999. You only get 128 gigabytes of SSD compared to the 256 out of these guys, but for $100 more, you can upgrade the hard drive space. If you are someone who lives in a browser or does a lot of document work, this is the best option. Battery life is good, has a nice versatile amount of ports, and most importantly, it has that 3:2 aspect ratio, which is fantastic for productivity. Second place, I wouldn't say second place, I'd say best all-arounder, is probably the best thing to say, is the HP Spectre X360. It's the most versatile. It gives you the most options. If you are someone who likes to write down notes, who draws, who maybe needs to become the next Picasso, the HP Spectre is a better option because you could use it as a regular laptop and then you can flip it 360 degrees and start drawing on it. It also comes with a pen, which is handy to have, but it doesn't have the best build quality out of the four. It's good, it's just not on par with the other three that I'm talking about. It's also priced very well, $1,119, so same price as the MacBook Air, the i5 version. And yeah, I mean, it's a great, great all-arounder. So best all-arounder, Surface Laptop, best bang for your buck. The best period out of these three, if you're okay switching to Windows, is the Dell XPS 13. Like, this just really hits the nail on the head. A matte display, so there's no reflection. You have the best color accuracy and color gamut out of all these laptops. It's not as pixel dense as the MacBook Air or the Surface Laptop 3 because those two laptops have higher resolutions, but you get the best battery life, 15 hours. You have the extra micro SD card slot. What else is there to talk about? The best performance. Sound is good. I mean, there's not really much to complain about. Build quality is probably the best out of the Windows laptops that I'm talking about, maybe on par with the Surface Laptop 3, but overall, probably the best option if you are okay not going with the MacBook Air. And this brings me back to the MacBook Air in general. Should you buy it? And the short answer is, of course. Like, why should you not? If you're someone who lives in that Apple ecosystem and who's just starting out in life and who's just starting to develop and is on a budget, this is your only option. You don't have anything else to go with. You know, and that's kind of the unfortunate part. You just don't have much selection. So yeah, this will get you started. You're not going to be editing 4K videos on this. You're not going to be playing the latest games, but it'll get you going. It will give you Mac OS, which a lot of people enjoy, including myself, and it'll give you all the standard Mac functions you love, the continuity between all of your devices that people appreciate about the Apple ecosystem. I do wish there were some things different about this, mainly the heat management. That's my only biggest complaint. It makes me very nervous seeing a CPU go to 100 degrees Celsius. I know it's meant to do that, even though the wattage on the CPU is lower, but it's a scary thing to look at. Like, it just doesn't make sense why Apple wouldn't simply connect the CPU to the fan using a heat pipe. I just don't understand. Like, why not do that? Like, why scare your users or scare the enthusiast users who are going to like look at this like myself with 100-degree temperatures? I just don't understand. Because I think if they cooled this properly, you get it anywhere from an extra 10 to 15% performance. Okay, I think that wraps this all up between all of these laptops in the last 8 minutes. I'm going to take your questions. Hi, I need a MacBook for work, font editing, vector drawing, but for nothing else. Would the Air be capable, or should I wait for the MacBook Pro 2020? I would honestly go for the MacBook Pro. If you're doing vector drawing and font editing, you could probably get away with the Air, but vector drawing or anything that requires an Adobe application, go with the MacBook Pro. It's just terrible software, Adobe software that is, and you're going to want to basically use a system that has a bit more power to offset the terrible programming. So I would go with the MacBook Pro. 1080p in 2020 is fine if you're using a 13-inch display. It's not a big deal. As soon as you start hitting 14 or 15 inches, being able to go up to QHD is a nice way to go. But 1080p is fine in 2020, especially if the color accuracy and the gamut and the brightness is good, like on the Dell XPS 13. It's fine. But again, you can buy the Dell XPS 13 with a 4K display if you really want to. Hi, I need a MacBook for work. Oh, you already answered that one. What is the most premium laptop for the money? I mean, this depends on the user. It depends on your workflow. Like some people will say the Carbon is. Some people will say the MacBook Pro 16. Others will say the Dell XPS 15. It really depends on your use case. Which is the best display quality for media consumption? So if you're doing media consumption, generally you want to be with 16:9, even though a lot of most movies are still in 16:9 or 21:9. So I'd still probably go with the wider display. So aspect ratio, you'd want to still be with a 16:9 display. Holy smoke, so many questions. Hi, I do a little basic Python. So is the Air good for me? Yeah, Air's fine. If you're doing a little bit of basic development, program development, MacBook Air is totally fine. It's going to get hot when you compile. Actually, I wanted to show you guys that. Do you guys want me to show you what the overheating looks like between the 2019 MacBook Air and the 2020 on basic tasks? If you want me to show you that, I can show you that as well. What is the best laptop under 1,000 Canadian? Ooh, under 1,000 Canadian. You're looking at a ZenBook or an Acer laptop, like an Acer Aspire. There's not too many good options for under 1,000. I think you might be able to get a Surface laptop for 1,100. iPad or Pro or MacBook Air 2020. So that's another question that comes down to your workflow. If you're just living in a browser and you could probably get away with an iPad Pro. It's very specific to what you do. Like I personally couldn't use an iPad Pro as my only device, but a lot of people could. But if you want to play it safe, I would say the MacBook Air. Which one is the cheapest one out of the four with a student discount? So that's a good question. If you apply the student discount to the MacBook Air, it will probably be on par with the $999 Surface Laptop 3. I forget if the discount is $50 or $100. If it's $100, it will be the same price as the Surface Laptop 3. Should I buy 64 gigabyte iPhone XR in 2020? I personally can get away with 64 gigabytes. I'd have to like optimize how my photos are saved, but I could do it. But I think the safe spot to be in for 2020 is 128 gigabytes. Best laptop for mobile app development. Well, if you're doing mobile app development, you're developing for iOS. So therefore, you are going to want a MacBook. Depending on how advanced your development programs are, you might want to consider the MacBook Pro 13 or wait for the 14. But if you're just like a brand new developer and what you're doing is nothing too intensive, then you will be able to get away with the MacBook Air. Are there thermal throttling and heating with the base model for the 2020 MacBook Air? Yes, there is. All MacBook Airs get hot. I have the 2019 MacBook Air over here with 2 cores, and it gets hot just loading up Spotify. It jumps up and down, but if you're doing anything for more than a couple of seconds, it gets hot. Can you do the same review for the 14-inch? So I get a lot of questions about the Asus Zephyrus G14 and G15. I don't have it yet. I would love to show you guys a review, but I don't have one here in the studio. As soon as I get them in here, I promise I will do a full review. I'll even do a live stream for you if you want to go over the laptops with you and answer all of your questions. So once I get that in, I promise to review that. Is 2019 Acer Swift 3 still worth buying? If you can get it for a really good deal under $500, then yes, I think it's a good deal to buy. RTX 2070 Super or 2080? They're both the same. They're both the same speeds. So whatever you can get a better deal on, you'll find that you can get the same performance. Is the 29? You already asked that. XPS or Spectre? What's my personal choice? Definitely the XPS 13. I don't need a 2-in-1. I don't need to flip my laptop to write on and draw on. I prefer the more traditional form factor. I also prefer the performance advantage of the XPS 13. The fact that I could hook it up to an external GPU and do things like game on it is kind of nice. I like the keyboard better. I like the display better. So yeah, 16:10, Dell XPS 13 for me. MacBook Pro 16 upgraded 2 terabyte SSD or 32 gigabytes of RAM. So it depends what you're doing. If you're just doing simple stuff, 16 gigabytes of RAM is more than capable. I'd probably spend the extra money on 2 terabytes of storage. But if you are a developer, if you're doing any sort of work that requires the extra RAM, then I think you'd be better off with 32 gigabytes. What is the best build quality Windows laptop? Gaming laptop, Ultrabook? I need some more specifics, people. Be specific. I'm kidding. What else? Which laptop has the loudest fans? So the Dell XPS 13 technically gets louder than the MacBook Air. Like when the MacBook Air is under load, it hits about 43 decibels, whereas the Dell XPS 13 will go up to 48 under load. But you have to remember, the Dell XPS 13 actually has 2 fans connected to a heat pipe. So it's doing a better job of removing that heat compared to the 1 fan on the MacBook Air. Did you do a live Save the Rogue? Yeah, I'm going to try to do a lot more live streams. You guys seem to like it. Like, just to ask you guys straight up, do you guys like these live streams? Do you find them valuable? Do you want me to continue doing them every single week if there's something interesting to talk about? If you do, let me know in the chat right now so I can keep these things going. Matt has the loudest fans. Get that? It's a dad joke. You guys are the fans. You guys are the loudest. Get it? Ha 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 ha. iPhone 12 Pro Max. I think that's it. iPhone 12 Pro Max. What's there to think about? It's not out yet. Do you suggest waiting for the MacBook Pro refresh or choose one among these? So Ranji, that's a great question. The MacBook Pro 16 is obviously going to get upgraded sometime in the near future. I don't know if they're going to redesign it, but I'm sure they're going to include the new 10th gen Intel processors. If you're just waiting for an Intel 10th gen upgrade, you'll find, I'll be straight up with you, you're probably not going to see that much of a performance difference with the new 10th gen processors, but you might get other added benefits with the new 16, like there's rumors of mini LED, maybe they'll shrink the bezels, maybe the laptop will become a little bit lighter, who knows? Like there will be other little benefits to make it a better product, but from strict performance, don't expect a huge boost unless they can do something with the cooling, which I doubt, with the 10th gen Intel i9 processors. Running eGPU setup with MacBook with Boot Camp. It's janky, man. It's janky. You're better off buying a Windows laptop for that. I think that's it. I think that's it for questions. XPS 13 or Yoga C940. Again, depends what you're doing. Like the C940 you can buy with an H series processor, so you can do a lot more demanding stuff, but it's a bigger, chunkier laptop. Personally, it just depends what you're doing. Like if you're just like an everyday dude browsing the web looking at cat memes, you're better off with the XPS 13. All right, I think we're getting so many questions I can't even keep up here. What would you buy, the Razer Blade Stealth 13 instead of these? So the brand new let's talk about the Blade Stealth quickly before I wrap this up. The Blade Stealth 13 this year is going to be very similar to the previous model. If I remember correctly, it's going to have a higher wattage CPU, so it's able to push out more performance. And I believe the GPU is going from a 1650 to a GTX 1650 Ti, and it's going to be the first performance Ultrabook with a 120 hertz display. Now, whether that's important to you is another story, because I can't imagine a lot of games, unless you're playing some really old titles, hitting 120 frames a second to take advantage of that high refresh rate, but it's something to consider. Holy smokes. Okay. Do you think that mini LED MacBook will be less than $1,300? No, I definitely do not think. It's going to be a lot more expensive. Okay, so between XPS clamshell, he spelled cumshell, just saying, and XPS 2-in-1, which is the better laptop for Adobe Premiere? The Dell XPS 15 by far. Not the 13, the 15. You want that dedicated GPU. It's going to make a big difference. And you're also moving up from a U-series processor to H, which offers a lot more performance. It requires more cooling, and it's just a better option for Adobe Premiere. You can also get it with minimum of 6 cores, which makes a difference instead of 4. So XPS 15 would be much better for Adobe Premiere. Okay, I think that's it. So a couple of things before I wrap this up. I am on Twitch every second night gaming. If you're a gamer and you're interested in Overwatch and Call of Duty Warzone and you're just looking for a way to get a hold of me to have a conversation, I'm happy to answer all your questions while I'm gaming. So feel free to jump on the Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Matt Moniz. Of course, we have our beautiful, wonderful Discord server that you can always try to get a hold of me on, discord.gg/Matt Moniz. Also, if you have any other questions, let me know in the comments section of this video. Make sure to give this video a like, and please, feedback. Let me know if you want to see more of these videos in the future. Let me know if you want to see more live streams, because I love doing them. I just want to make sure you guys love watching them. So that concludes it. Please stay safe, stay away from everybody, social distance. Let's get this world back to where it was before, hopefully better. And like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Python, Discord crew, everybody else, thank you so much for moderating the chat. You guys are the best, and enjoy your weekend.